Wrestling Reverb is a part of the Pulse Podcast Network. Pulse Podcast Network provides you with the best variety of podcasts on the web, from sports such as the WWE and NBA, all the way through to Dungeons & Dragons podcasts and anything in between. Head on over to pulsepodcastnetwork.com, or you can download the Pulse Podcast app, which is available on both Apple devices and Android devices.
Hello?
Hello everyone, welcome to Wrestling Reverb. It is, as you've seen on social media, it is a kind of a new time for this show, this podcast, because 35 episodes in, or however many I've done at this stage, I knew that eventually I always wanted to have a co-host. It was just finding the kind of right person to do it, and just someone that I just naturally kind of gelled with, and that isn't just a total a-hole. And as most of you that are listening now have probably listened to my Royal Rumble recap, and I had a lovely guy on there, and we kind of been chatting back and forth the last maybe week and a half or so, and we kind of come to the decision. I was like, I think this is probably the right person to go with this, with the co-host. He kind of has the same kind of ideas and kind of excitement and as I do, as in just presenting the best kind of podcast and just having a nice, natural, fun conversation. So please, if you didn't listen to the Royal Rumble recap, I would suggest pausing this right now, going back and listening. But for anyone that didn't, Kevin, would you please introduce yourself to the world as you kind of get a bit more familiar with podcasting and Wrestling Reverb in general?
Yes, certainly. First off, thank you, Josh, for having me on here and inviting me to be your co-host. This is a huge honor for me. I'm really excited to get started with this and to take this podcast to the next level. It's a new day. Yes, it is. But like you said, my name's Kevin Carroll. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Last Blogger Standing. I'm a contributor to Diva Dirt and to The Chair Shot. I've done a lot of writing, a lot of wrestling writing, and I'm looking to branch out. So now this opportunity has presented itself, and I'm looking to take it and run with it. I loved my appearance on the Royal Rumble show. Again, if you haven't checked that out, be sure to check that out either now, pause this, go check that out, or check it out afterwards, because we had a great time, and we're going to have the great times are going to keep rolling. I'm positive in that. So, I'm just a kid who likes wrestling, likes to talk, likes to write, likes to converse with other like-minded wrestling fans, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to have you. As I kind of alluded to before, we've been chatting back and forth on Twitter, and I just thought I haven't really had that. We had such a natural conversation for our Royal Rumble recap. We could have literally talked for hours and hours more. So
yeah, it felt like it blew by.
Yeah, and I believe we talked for at least 2 hours. At least I don't know but even in our pre-chat and stuff before we recorded the Royal Rumble recap, we were talking for quite a while, and it doesn't seem unnatural. Anyone who talks to someone they've never met before, or they've never talked to before, it can get awkward very fast, and I just don't think we ever really had that. So that was kind of a bit of a signal for me to go, Kevin obviously has a very natural ability to talk about wrestling, and I think, you can speak on this a lot better than I can, but I think you're probably looking to get into podcasting, maybe?
Yeah, I think this year, with the start of the new year, one of my biggest goals for myself as a wrestling fan and as a personality is to branch out more into the podcasting world. I've always been a fan. I've listened to a bunch of your shows. I've listened to tons of wrestling podcasts, consuming as much content as I can, just sort of seeing how it goes, what goes into it, what works and what doesn't. And I like to think that I'm going to bring something pretty valuable to the show.
Yeah, definitely. It's always nice to have just another voice on this show, a permanent voice that will just always be here as well. And as we get, used to each other as well, I think we will have a lot of fun. There'll be, especially leading up, I think this is kind of the perfect time to bring in a co-host. As I said, I've done about 35 episodes. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it was the perfect time. This is my first Mania season as a podcaster. I think we'll have a lot to talk about in terms of leading up to Mania, just going back on old Manias, and as we lead into this year's Mania, I just think it was the right time and the right person to do this with. So I'm just really excited. Generally, I'm just really, really excited to see where this leads to and to kind of take it to the next step, because I feel like this podcast for a little while, especially in the last couple of months, I've really gained a little bit of steam with some things. And I'm not saying I'm huge or anything. I'm definitely not a big podcast at all, but I've definitely seen, just different things, and just the comfortability has gotten so much better. And you will kind of learn as you kind of do more podcasts. You'll get more comfortable with this. It would just become more and more natural to do this. So I'm just really excited to have you on, and just kind of take things up a little bit, take things up a notch, and just have a friend to talk about wrestling with, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, man, that's what it boils down to, is just two guys talking about wrestling, talking about something they love. And you made a great point. We're on the road to WrestleMania. It's hot. It's hot right now. This is the right time to get into wrestling. This is the right time to get into the game if you're looking for something to occupy your time between football and baseball season. It's wrestling season right now.
Yeah, and not only that, I've had, a few guests on in the last, couple of weeks, with Brian and stuff like that. He's even been messaging me. He wants to come on and kind of chat with you as well. So
Ooh.
We'll still have guests come on from time to time, especially leading into Mania. There's going to be, I think we'll have a lot of content to produce leading up to Mania, so I don't think it's going to be an issue of what to talk about, because there's going to be so much to do.
Yeah.
And also, I will kind of remind everyone, Reverb Rewind is still coming. I'm just in the just working out a few little kinks on how I'm going to do it. For anyone that hasn't kind of followed my social media, and you as well, Kevin, I'll kind of explain why I'm on here. Reverb Rewind will be coming. It's going to be taking a look at past WWE events from any kind of era and stuff like that. It's going to be completely all on social media. There will be 4 every week to choose from, 4 different classic pay-per-views. You will vote, and then Kevin and I will sit down. We will watch the show. We'll take a few notes, and just like our Royal Rumble recap, we'll go back and recap the show. And especially if it's a past WWE event, because we're not living in the now, we can kind of judge it for exactly what it is, instead of being like, oh, it's leading to this, it's leading to this. It's kind of is what it is. And also, I know for me, you'll probably be the same. It's a chance to go back and watch wrestling. So it's just another excuse to watch more wrestling than we probably should.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me twice to go back and watch wrestling. That's not a job description. That's a fun description. And I'm looking forward to getting those done too. I love going back. And you make a great point. I love going back and watching the old pay-per-views, because we have the benefit of hindsight now, and we sort of know what happened afterwards. So like you might see a booking decision that you're like, well, that didn't work out in the long run, but to see it play out, live 15 some odd years ago, it's a really unique perspective we get as wrestling fans, to be able to go back and dissect wrestling from all eras.
Yeah, I agree. And not that this podcast is sponsored by the WWE Network, but hey, we're always looking. WWE Network is perfect for that, because you can literally just watch any past WWE event. So, and involving other people to vote and stuff like that is just encouraging, and I just wanted something a little bit different, instead of just the standard, just talking about what's kind of going on now. Let's go back and we'll watch some old pay-per-views and, just have fun talking about wrestling. And, I like to consider myself I'm pretty knowledgeable when it comes to wrestling, so, but even, all of us do. we forget things that happen. We just kind of put things in the back of our brain, especially as we go back in the time. But, you know, you mentioned on the Royal Rumble recap show that you've been a wrestling fan since 2006, I believe you said?
Yep.
So, obviously you've gone back and watched other things and, you know your kind of deal with wrestling, but even for someone like you who wasn't a wrestling fan before that, it'll be fun to go back and watch pay-per-views from, 99, the year 2003, whatever it may be. And especially for me too, because I was only a kid when they were, happening live and stuff like that. So it'll be really fun, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to it. And you're right. Going back to watch the old pay-per-views before I was a wrestling fan is always a kick, because you get to see familiar faces, you see guys you've never heard of, you see matches you may never have. They may be off your radar, but you never know, because some of those old matches were really good, and we don't talk about them as much as we talk about more recent matches.
Yeah.
Because of the explosion of wrestling podcasting, wrestling media, we have more platforms to talk about stuff like that. But it's cool to go back and watch those old shows and compare them to shows from today.
Yeah, I agree. And especially with Mania coming up, I'm sure we'll have some Mania-driven ones as well. So we'll go back and watch some old Manias, which is fun leading up to WrestleMania. It's something I do every kind of Mania season. I try to go back and watch a couple of WrestleManias from years past just to get me in the mood for Mania this year. I
do the same thing. I try to watch as many Manias as I could squeeze in. It's tough. They're long, especially now. Again, it's not a bad thing.
Oh, no. So as we kind of, we're discussing what's kind of going to be the best way to start, you on here and just get this journey, I thought we need to get to know Kevin. We need to know how he thinks about wrestling, what his kind of things are. So I thought the best way to do this, I've done this once one of the very first episodes of this podcast. I sat down with a local friend of mine, Ryan. We sat down, we wrote down a bunch of wrestling things, we cut them all up, we put them into a hat, and we just drew them out one by one and talked about wrestling, gave us our thoughts on that little snippet. So I thought, with Kevin, let's do the same thing. I'll chime in as well, don't worry. But I've just wrote down a lot. Like, we will not get through all of these, we'll get through a lot of them, but we won't get through all of these. But I just thought, what a great way to get to know Kevin and how he kind of portrays wrestling and his kind of views on wrestling. Does that sound cool with you, Kevin?
Oh my God, yeah, I'm excited. I'm on the hot seat, but it feels good.
Alrighty, so let's get started. Let's draw out the first little one. Let's see what we start with. Oh, this is fitting for now. Women main eventing WrestleMania. Is it overdue?
Oh, it's long overdue. It really is long overdue. Especially these last couple of years with the pure talent, the heart, the determination, the drive, the grit, the whatever. You could throw any word in there and it would fit. But just with how much ass these ladies have kicked the last couple of years, and even going back before that, when they were getting the 2-minute matches, they were getting the bathroom break matches, and people really didn't care about women's wrestling. To see how far it's come since then, to see that like this year we have a very, very likely scenario in which women will be main eventing WrestleMania. If you go back and you ask a wrestling fan from like 15 years ago, hey, do you think women will ever be in the main event at Mania? They'll laugh right in your face. Women don't even get on Mania half the time. They didn't. The last couple of years has been, there's a couple of really great matches we've seen the last couple of years. It's really a stark contrast from what we've been used to. And so I'm super excited. I think this is the right blend of talent, timing, and the situation is right for women to be main eventing WrestleMania now.
Yeah, I agree. Why I do think it's overdue, I also think it's exactly the right time. I do think that women have, like you said, have busted their ass. They really have deserved this spot for a little while, but I do think there's been no hotter story than Becky and Ronda. So I do think that this is the right time. Yes, to a certain degree, I do believe it's overdue as well. But to be honest, yeah, it's a big deal that women are main eventing WrestleMania, but there's no real hotter story in all of and at least WWE at the moment, in terms of a main event of WrestleMania, it's almost in the back of my head that it's women main eventing WrestleMania. This is just the deserved main event.
Yeah, it's any other year, it may have seemed forced if they were trying to slide the women into the main event slot. It may have seemed like almost just gratuitous. But this year, this is the hottest story in wrestling: Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch. This is the main event. I don't think there's a person out there who would disagree right now.
If you do, you're blind, honestly, because
if you do, you're just a mad you're a mad Twitterer.
Yeah, exactly. Because anyone could see that this is the hottest story. Whether you even there is obviously people that aren't fans of Ronda. There's obviously people that aren't fans of Becky. If you're even not a fan of these two ladies, it's definitely even the people that aren't fans have to see through that. Okay, I may not like this, but this is what needs to happen. This is the main event. This is what's... If there was a hotter story than Becky and Ronda, I would, be the first to admit, okay, maybe this isn't the time. This isn't the hottest story, but this really is the hottest story going since November, really.
And you make a great point too with fans. You don't have to be a fan of Ronda and you don't have to be a fan of Becky to appreciate what they're doing. At this point, if you fail to see the significance of what they're doing, and you fail to see the crowd reaction, and you fail to see just how awesome these ladies are doing week in and week out, I think you're purposely trying to look away at this point. I think it's just, you can't miss these two.
No, I agree with you completely. There's not really much more to say on that, just because it is what it is, and if it doesn't, to be honest, if they're really, I don't think the company at all is against putting women in the main event of WrestleMania at all. But if it doesn't happen this year, I don't think it ever will.
I agree. I think this is the perfect storm. Like I said before, the timing is right, the talent is right, the situation is right. You have all these ingredients just perfectly blending together for a knockout WrestleMania main event. And it just so happens to be Ronda and Becky. It's not like, wow, women are main eventing WrestleMania. It's the main event of WrestleMania just happens to include women because it's the main event story in professional wrestling right now.
I agree. Let's get out the next one. Ooh, this is a very get to know Kevin one. Favorite match of all time.
Whew. Okay, I knew this one was going to be in there somewhere, so I have spent some time thinking about this. And I have two answers based on two different sort of sentiments. Undertaker and Triple H from WrestleMania 28, the Hell in a Cell match, was always going to be probably my favorite match ever, just because of the story behind it, the whole end of an era thing. Undertaker's trying to get to 20-0. Triple H is trying to do what he couldn't do, what Shawn Michaels couldn't do. You had the Cell. It was on the grand stage, WrestleMania. It just, everything clicked, and the match itself was fantastic. Had probably the best near fall I've ever seen, where Undertaker kicked out of not just the Sweet Chin Music, but the pedigree as well, got the 2 count. I remember watching that. I thought it was over. I thought the match was over. Everyone I was watching with thought the match was over. I couldn't even breathe after he kicked out of that.
It's a brilliant match.
Brilliant match, brilliant story. And then the other one more recently, for different reasons, I'd say Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada from Wrestle Kingdom 11. Because that was my very first New Japan show. Not just my first Wrestle Kingdom. That was my first time ever watching New Japan. And boy, could I have picked a better night? No, I could not have, because that match for 47 minutes, just things I've never seen before. Omega and Okada were doing things that I never thought possible in a wrestling ring. And to hold my attention for 47 minutes and just to be, classic spot, great storytelling, great everything about it was just firing on all cylinders. And that match basically told me I got to start watching this New Japan, because these guys are up to snuff.
Yeah, that was actually my first New Japan experience as well, was that night. So that's a funny coincidence, but I do remember watching that and being like, God dang, like this is some incredible stuff. Like, it is very, very good. And just going back to Triple H and Taker, I was exactly the same on that near fall. I thought it was over, and so did everyone else that I was sitting in the room watching it with.
Yeah, we were screaming, hooping, and hollering.
Oh,
It
so was
was
I.
yeah, that match created such an incredible atmosphere.
Yeah. And just the story of that match, like, I love storytelling in a match as much as anybody else, and that is a perfect example of just perfect storytelling. It's just the that kick out especially, he had Shawn bouncing around the ring, putting his, what has he done? And Triple H couldn't believe it, and just even Taker just lying on the ground, like, you know, it is just a close to perfect match.
Yeah.
Um,
That was the best instance of something that came to define Taker over the last couple of years of his
yeah,
streak was that you could hit him with just about anything, but you couldn't quite put him away. And that was
no,
about as close as we ever saw before WrestleMania 30 when he did get put away.
that was, I mean, that match itself, was it amazing? I don't think so, but just the significance of it, I just remember watching that and just my mouth was just wide open, like anybody, like what the hell have we just seen?
Yeah.
It just talking about that briefly. Do you think that was the right decision?
No. No, I don't. And it's easy to say that just because I was always a big Undertaker fan and I wanted the streak to live on forever. In a perfect world for me, I would have had Taker retire after the Hell in a Cell match with Triple H because it would have been 20-0. Nice little round number. The end of an era would have meant so much more. That tagline would have meant so much more if that had been really the end of an era. But we got more after that. And while Taker and Punk had a great match the next year to make it 21-0, I really thought that Taker should have gone out with the number still intact. And it just broke my heart to see him lose the way he did.
Yeah, I don't know. I always go back and forth on whether it was the right thing to do or not. In a way, I agree with you because he really should have went out with the number intact and why he was still performing at a level that he was, stealing the show at Mania. But then I see the other thing is like, would Brock have the run he had if he didn't break the streak? So, I mean, it did take away Undertaker's kind of mystique to a certain degree. He's still the Undertaker. He still has a presence, of course, but it added to Brock Lesnar a lot. Like, there is no one else that can say they broke the streak. Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I see your point. I would just argue that I personally think even if Lesnar lost that match to Taker, I think if he still comes back and rips through John Cena at SummerSlam later that year, the way he did, I still think he makes himself into a mega star.
Oh, I definitely. It's always going to be a topic that's going to be argued, no matter what. You're never going to get two people that just like I 100% agree with you. But like I said, I go back and forth all the time on whether it was the right thing. I just remember watching that Mania. I just come back from a holiday. I was like, time changes were all like crazy, and I was just an emotional wreck because as you are when you're tired. And I just remember just watching that and being like, what is going on? But it was, regardless of anything, it'll be a moment I never forget.
Yeah, I remember exactly. It's one of those things you know where you were. You remember where you were when Undertaker lost the streak. I was at a party with a bunch of my friends watching the show, and when the ref counted 3, he counted the pinfall. No one said a word for maybe 5 minutes. We were all just in shock.
It did. I remember the match after. I believe it was like a big Divas match. Maybe
it was like the Divas Invitational.
Yeah. And like, I love women's wrestling to bits. I love it, and even I couldn't get involved in that match. I was just like, what did we just seen? I just remember. I don't think the crowd were very impressed, as they weren't. They kind of picked back up when Bryan kind of got the big win. It would have been interesting to see what that crowd done if Bryan didn't win, because if he didn't win, we would definitely be having a very different feeling towards WrestleMania 30.
Oh my god! If Bryan doesn't win that match, WrestleMania 30 probably goes down as an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
Uh, it's funny that you actually mentioned that match too. It was because of I think there may have been 20, 25 people at this little WrestleMania party I was at. 24 of them were rooting for Daniel Bryan, and then there was me rooting for my guy Batista.
Oh.
But in retrospect, I'm very glad Daniel Bryan won.
Oh,
It
that
just
could've
it was
went sour.
it made way too much sense.
Yeah, it was the literal only option that they had to end WrestleMania on a high note.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we'll kind of move on because we kind of digress. But what's next? Let's have a look. Oh, I don't know how you'll feel about this one. Is it time for Total Divas to end?
Honestly, I haven't even. I mean, I stopped watching Total Divas a couple of seasons ago. I don't really know what the allure is anymore. I feel like that was a show that was for a different time in women's wrestling. I feel like that was more for the Divas era, as evidenced by the name of said show, Total Divas, and now Total Bellas is the spin-off. And I don't know if they're ever going to end it because you keep rotating in new cast members, and there's always going to be people that want to know what their lives are like outside the ring. But if it were up to me personally, I would have ended the show. I would have ended the show a couple of years ago. I don't know what numbers it does anymore. I don't know exactly who's tuning in, but obviously I'm not the TV executives who decide to renew it, because obviously it does enough ratings to warrant renewal. So I can't say for certainty that no one watches the show, but I know I used to watch it every week, and now I couldn't care less about it.
I'm the same. I haven't watched it in 2-3 seasons. I completely agree with you. Do you think it did its job of bringing in another audience to wrestling, or do you think it's just more so, for the most part, the people that watch Total Divas are just going to watch Total Divas?
I think that largely people just watch Total Divas and don't gravitate to wrestling. But I know that, especially at first, I knew some friends of mine who didn't watch wrestling, but they started to watch Total Divas, and they had an idea of what was going on. They weren't wrestling fans by any stretch after the show came out, but they at least wanted to know what was going on with their favorite characters from Total Divas. So I think it really deserves some credit for introducing women's wrestling to a new audience. I just don't know if it kept that audience as well as it probably could have. I don't think it created a whole new generation of diehard women's wrestling fans.
No, I agree with you completely. I personally think, like you, I think it's run its course. I think with any entertainment industry thing, they milk it dry. They really try to get everything out of it as they can. So I do think it has run its course. I think Total Divas will eventually come to an end, but I don't think Total Bellas is going anywhere for a little while, because obviously Nikki and Brie are probably the mainstream stars out of that show, and they're obviously not wrestling all the time, so they have
the time to devote to the show.
Exactly.
And I think you're right. The Bellas were very clearly positioned as the stars of Total Divas.
Yeah.
That was pretty apparent from the start. It was only a matter of time before they got their own show. And people are always going to be intrigued, especially with all the people around the Bellas. Mm-hmm. You have the whole John Cena fiasco still carries some water. You get to see Daniel Bryan. You get to see Johnny Laurinaitis. I think that in and of itself is fun for people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. I think Total Bellas is going to have a pretty long shelf life.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. People seem to be pretty enamored with the twins, to be honest. So I have no problem whether Total Divas or Total Bellas was to stay. It really makes no difference to me. But
yeah, it doesn't bother.
No. It's just more so, how much longer can we go on with this? I believe they're going into maybe their 8th season, 7th season, something like that. But
it's crazy. I think they made it that far, though.
I mean,
I will say this, that when you debut a show about women's wrestling on the E Network, I don't think I gave it much of a chance at first.
No, not
so for it to be heading into 7 or 8 seasons, I will give it a hell of a lot of credit for having some staying power.
Yeah, no, I agree. Have you seen about that new show they're doing to look for another female superstar? I believe it's going
Yeah.
on E. I don't know. Were you a fan of Tough Enough? Did you believe? I get a really weird feeling towards those kind of shows because the track record of having someone from, say, a Tough Enough isn't great. Like, I know you've got Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. They came from Tough Enough, but it's just, and Velveteen, of course. But I mean, those shows have such a stigma.
Yeah, here's the thing about Velveteen, Mandy, and Sonya was that none of them won, which is crazy to think about now, given how much success they've all enjoyed. But no one remembers Sarah Lee won the last season of Tough Enough, and she stunk.
Yeah,
but with a show like that, you put the power in the fans' hands, and I don't always trust the fans, to be quite honest. But I remember I pegged Patrick Clark, now known as Velveteen Dream. I pegged him to win from the start. The fact that he didn't win was crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
But he got eliminated on such a technique. I forget what it was, but even they knew that they were making the wrong decision sending him home.
Yeah.
Jericho to him afterwards. He gave him the little speech about how he's going to be back, and here he is, and he's one of the biggest stars in the industry.
Yeah.
Those shows, they're not star maker shows for me.
Nah, they're not. Sure, you find stars within the show, but I hope that I know WWE will do it regardless, but I do think it'll be in the fans' hands, which I really hope it's not. I would rather it be manufactured from a business standpoint or just the talent scouting standpoint. But at the end of the day, it's a reality show. They need to, produce content. So, I mean, it is what it is. Will I tune in? I mean, probably. I kind of give anything with WWE Association a chance. So, to me, to a certain degree, it is a wrestling show. So, I mean, I'll probably watch it for the most part, but it's not like I'm out of here going, oh, the winner of this is going to be, the next Becky Lynch. Sure, it could happen, but I don't really go into those shows with that kind of mindset. So
what was that? Oh, sorry, I didn't hear what you were saying there.
Oh, can you hear me now? What?
Yeah, no, I can hear you. I was briefly distracted.
That's all good. We'll go on to the next topic. Let's have a look. Oh, who are you hopeful one day will come back to the WWE?
Who am I? Oh, okay. That's a good question because there's answers that I think people. I think there are some obvious answers, and I think there's my answer, which I right off the top of my head, one guy I hope comes back is Batista. And Batista's been one of my favorite. Batista's probably been my second favorite wrestler since I started watching, only behind Rey Mysterio. I've always loved him. I hated seeing him go in 2010, and his run back in 2014, like we briefly touched on before, where he was there at WrestleMania, but it was largely a failed run, I'd say, in terms of they tried to push him as a face at first. That didn't work. The fans turned on him pretty quick. It turned pretty hostile. I'd love to see him come back, and the rumors are always going to be out there that he, for Batista. Batista, I think, wants to come back and finish up.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'd love to see him come back and just get one more run to sort of erase the stigma of that last run, because that left a bad taste in my mouth.
I think it did with a lot of people, to be honest. Batista is someone, especially in his last run, like you kind of mentioned, he copped a lot of slack in that last run, and was it really warranted? I don't think so. He was still performing at the same kind of level he was when he was around, full time, and I don't think it was warranted at all. But he has mentioned several times that he wants to kind of come back, have one more little run, and I think to him erase that kind of comeback that he did in 2014, just because it went the way it did, and it is what it is. But Batista's one that I always kind of have in the back of my mind. Have you got any more?
Yeah, here's a bit slightly more obscure one. Not obscure, but a slightly smaller name. Damien Sandow.
Oh, yes.
I was a huge Damian Sandow fan in his run. The intellectual savior gimmick was one of my favorite things about weekly WWE television. And I really think he got like the short end of the stick in his entire tenure, from losing Money in the Bank to being turned into a joke. And the thing is, he ran with everything they gave him, and he got over, imitating people. He got over pretending to be Hulk Hogan or Macho Man Randy Savage, despite just some awful. He was the Miz's stunt double, and he made that a phenomenon. Like, the guy's a great worker. The guy is really good with what they give him, and I really didn't like the way they just sort of let him go. It didn't feel right. He went to Impact briefly, and now I don't know what he's doing, but I'd love to see him get one more run too.
Yeah, he was always a very underutilized talent. Sandow was great. That Mizdow stuff was hilarious. He did a fantastic job in that. Props to him and Miz for that, because that was fun. It was just pure fun. There was nothing, weird about it or anything. It was just fun to watch.
It was.
For
a lot of times we forget that wrestling is supposed to be fun.
Yeah, I know. People seem to, especially on the internet, you've seen it, I've seen it, people suck the fun out of wrestling and just focus so much on what's wrong, what they could do better. Just sometimes you just got to sit back and enjoy the ride for what it is, whether you agree with it or not. Just take the journey and you'll enjoy wrestling so much more. The internet sucks a lot of fun out of not only wrestling, but everything, but wrestling especially.
Say, it's not just wrestling. It's a everything type of epidemic. The internet just is a minefield of rage, and
people are just angry all the time on the internet, and it's just like, calm down, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
So for me, I have a couple. My first one, I'll always answer this first, is Wade Barrett. I would love to see Wade Barrett come back, because he was someone that was always, if there was, that upper mid-card status that just couldn't, no matter what happened, he just couldn't quite get to the next stage. He was always on the cusp, and he was always someone everyone looked at as, he could be a world champion, he could really do some really great things. And then, he kind of just, I think he fell out of love with wrestling a little bit, to be honest, or just fell out of love with WWE.
That's fair. Yeah. With some of the stuff he's definitely someone I thought was going to be the WWE champion someday. I thought he was going to beat Cena for it, which is a huge rub.
Yeah.
But he just sort of he did really good work. Even obviously the Nexus was fantastic. And then, he was an Intercontinental Champion a bunch of times, ran a couple other stables. He was always relevant.
Yeah.
And he always did good. He was in a very Sandow-esque in a way where with what he was given, he did very well with. The Bad News Barrett thing, that should have been a failure, but he made that into something that was something you looked forward to every week.
Yeah, it was just something that popped up, and it was just like, yep, this is great. I think the King Barrett stuff hurt more than helped, as it's done with a few other people, but that's always the first name that'll pop into my head as someone I want to come back to WWE. And I feel like if he come back, I think he'd be a bigger deal than before. But that's just my point of view, but it may not be that at all. But and the other person is, I will always think of her as well, is Beth Phoenix. I want Beth Phoenix to have one more little run, as I just think Beth was in a time where I wish she was in her prime now, because she was I just think the world of Beth Phoenix. I think she's an incredible worker that was around at the wrong time.
She fits in more with this generation of women. She wasn't a diva. She was a woman. And she really was in the wrong time.
Yeah, and I just think I just think her psychology in the ring, she knew exactly what to do. If you go back and even watch Beth's matches with any of the girls, she could bring anyone up. She knew exactly what to do and when. And I just think Beth is one that would be perfect now. And I'm not saying like a long, run. She's definitely, transitioned into more of a different role. I think she does great work as a commentator. I think Beth is not really one that we talk about enough in terms of a commentary, because I don't think Beth Phoenix was ever known for cutting like the most amazing promos, but I think she's fairly natural in the commentary field. She did a great job at the Mae Young Classic. She did a great job at Evolution. She was a commentator for the Royal Rumble. A lot of people, I don't personally, but a lot of people don't see a lot with Renee's commentary. I don't think Renee is bad by any means. I just think she's learning on the job.
Yeah,
Beth,
she kind of got tossed into the fire pretty quickly. Renee did. I don't have a problem with her.
No.
For me, if I'm complaining about the commentary, it's got to be bad because I don't put too terribly much stock into it. I try to focus on the wrestling, and if they make it to a point where I have to focus on the commentary, and it's not like that hasn't happened, recently, relatively, but if that's the case, then yeah, it's bad. But I don't think Renee's too bad, and I think Beth, particularly in the Mae Young Classic, which was a lot of people's first exposure to her on commentary. But I thought she's such a natural wrestling mind.
Yeah.
That she knows what she's talking about in there. She clearly did her homework on just about everybody. And she really like her and Cole and Renee played off each other well. The three of them did. Cole had a lot of fun in the Mae Young Classic. It was very apparent.
Yeah. I love the Mae Young Classic in general. I thought the Mae Young Classic was fantastic. The commentary added to it. Like you said, commentary is something that I can tune out. It's kind of background noise. But also agreeing with you is if it is really apparent that they're, arguing or just taking away from the match, I do hear it, and it does piss me off a lot when I do hear it. But I mean, I have no problem with Renee. I think it's because I like Renee's personality. I just think she is just a fun personality. So I think that does add into the fact that of her commentary. But like you said, she's tossed into the fire. She's learning on the job. Beth, with the difference of her and Beth is Beth's not on Raw every week. She's doing, Mae Young Classic, Evolution. She did the Rumble. I believe she did the Mixed Match Challenge, maybe. But there's, I don't know. Yeah, she there's a difference. But Beth is someone that I'd like to see have just a little mini run, maybe a match with Nia Jax. That'd be fun. I don't think it'd be the most amazing match ever, but I do think it'd be fun just for what they.
It'd be a cool showcase of strength, and I bet Beth would still go. I don't think there's a doubt that. Just seeing her in last year's Rumble, just seeing the shape she's still in, I wouldn't mind seeing her give it one more go too.
Yeah, should be fun to see. Moving on. What do we got next? Ooh. Is wrestling still cool? And is it in the mainstream again? Or is wrestling still, that weird other kind of entertainment?
I think we're getting away from that more and more. I still think there's always going to be a subset of people that think wrestling is for boogery and nerds who just don't they don't have lives, they're weird, they watch wrestling. I think that'll always be a thing, but I do think that more and more wrestling is becoming accepted in the mainstream. I think it started with ESPN picking up wrestling back in 2015. Featuring going to WrestleMania, tweeting about it, featuring it on SportsCenter. I think that opened a lot of people's eyes to that this is this isn't the worst thing in the world. Wrestling's not that bad. It's pretty cool, actually. And I think that since then, it's gotten a lot more mainstream press. I think it's gotten cooler. I think people out there are coming back to wrestling. They may have been fans as kids, fell out of it when it became uncool. Because there was a time where wrestling probably wasn't the coolest thing to watch. I've been there. I was there. Yeah. But people gravitate back, and I think people are gravitating back now because of the mainstream attention wrestling gets. WrestleMania is everyone watches WrestleMania.
Yeah, everyone.
Even the Rumble, everyone, people I know that never have watched wrestling are calling me. They're in Rumble pools. They're like, oh, who's this guy? Is he gonna win? What is this a good number? People are getting into it, and they care more than we might think.
Yeah, I agree with you because even I had people that I didn't even know watch wrestling at all. They were watching the Rumble, and I was getting messages on Facebook just because they know I'm a wrestling fan. Hey, is this good? They were similar to you in Royal Rumble kind of pools, and they had numbers and stuff like that. They were like, oh, what's the statistic on this number and stuff like that. So the Rumble and Mania people know, and they watch, especially Mania. I'll have more people going, oh, like, what's going on? Like, can you catch me up at all? Which is fun.
Yeah.
I like that. There is a sense, I don't know how it is for you, but I get like this. It almost, not that I'm the type of person that like, oh, I'm not going to watch it because it's mainstream. Like, I'm not that type of person at all. But there is almost a sense for me as a wrestling fan that it's almost cooler that not everyone is watching it, because it's this own kind of thing in my mind that's like, why aren't more people watching this? So in a weird way, it's like my own little thing that people know that I watch it, and I like being that person that's like, yeah, come to me for wrestling knowledge, or come to me for, you know, what you want to know about wrestling. But I do think that it's, in this day and age, it's certainly more mainstream and more quote-unquote cool than it was, say, 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you 100%. I feel the same way about wrestling, whereas I kind of want it to stay. I want it to succeed, obviously. I want it to be popular, but I also, there's a part of me that wants it to stay, like, the little, you know, like, off to the side, sort of, oh, you know, you don't want, like, wrestling is cool because it's something that not a lot of people watch.
It's like our little thing.
Yeah, like an outlier of sorts in the world of entertainment.
Yeah.
But I think it's trending away from that, and I'm certainly not mad about it. I mean, I want as many people as can be to watch wrestling and to love it as much as I do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. Wrestling has its own aura, and I just think I honestly don't think it'll ever break that stigma with some people. It's always going to be, oh, wrestling's fake, or wrestling's this. It's like, I don't even, that used to bother me a lot when people would say that, but now I don't care. Say whatever you want. I'm going to keep doing me. But it certainly is it's at a different stage than it was, like I said, like 10 years ago. So it is what it is. Moving on. What do we got here? Ooh. China in the Hall of Fame. Will it ever happen?
If you asked me this question as recently as last year, I may have said no. But I think now, I think that the cries for China to get into the Hall of Fame are too great for them to ignore much longer. I think her contributions as a wrestler and as a woman to the industry far supersede her problems outside of the ring. I think that she deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I think that a wrestling Hall of Fame without China, it doesn't make much sense, because she changed the game.
Yeah.
So I think that I think we might see her in this year. I wouldn't be totally shocked if she was in this year.
Neither would I. I agree with you. China is someone that transcended women in the industry. She broke a lot of barrier, a lot of molds. You know, she was an Intercontinental Champion. She was in DX. She was a women's champion. She brought in a lot of attention. Well, in a time when there was a lot of attention on wrestling, but she was certainly someone that captivated people's minds and energy. So I do think it's well deserved. It much, you know, her stuff in the ring and just as a contribution to the business, you know, far outdoes the stuff that she did outside of the industry. And I agree with you. I don't think it's, you know, completely out of the question that happens this year. It's more than well deserved, and it's more than overdue.
And the thing I look at too is and this is how you gauge where WWE is with somebody. We saw it with Hogan. They've begun to mention her on TV again. They started at Raw 25. They mentioned her in that great DX club segment.
Yeah.
They brought up China, and I think that with her untimely passing, a lot of people's perceptions of her shifted.
Yeah.
I think that she has the sentimental backing of the fans now that maybe she didn't have before. And I think that, yeah, I definitely think that she deserves to be in. She transcended the sport. She competed with the men in a time before anyone thought that was even possible.
Yeah.
I just think a Hall of Fame without China isn't much of a Hall of Fame. And if you want to look at, if you want to look at her extracurriculars outside of the wrestling industry, you'd have to do that with everyone you put in there.
Yep.
And there are some shady people in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So you could, if you want to make that case with her, you have to make that case with everybody. And if you make that case with everybody that, oh, what they did outside of the ring supersedes this, then you'd have to take a lot of people out of the Hall of Fame.
It'd be it'd be a very lonely Hall of Fame, I think. Everyone has their own choices that they make, and the Hall of Fame should be for what you've done in wrestling, and, you know, for the most part, not with everybody, but it should
there are definitely exceptions, but
yeah.
China, for what she did in the ring to change the industry compared to what she did outside the ring, I think it's far in the favor of what she did in the ring.
I agree 100%. Move on. Oh, this one kind of floats in nicely. Intergender wrestling. We saw at the Rumble, Nia Jax was in the men's Rumble. She took 619, and we kind of talked about this in the Royal Rumble recap and stuff like that. Intergender wrestling, I think, in WWE won't be the same as it is on the indie circuit or in other places. Yeah. But, you know, a week or so removed from the Rumble, we seen Nia Jax last week have a little bit of an interaction with Dean Ambrose and you know, whatever it may be. I personally don't think WWE are going to go too much further with it. But is it something you see more of in the future? We'll just talk WWE because it does happen in pretty much everywhere else except WWE. Do you think WWE are going to continue with this kind of stuff? Or is it just a Nia Jax thing? Do you think intergender wrestling has a place in WWE? Or is it too much? Is it too obscure for the mainstream audience to accept intergender wrestling?
I just think that with the corporate nature of WWE, they have, you know, the shackles sort of on them that like smaller independent promotions don't. I don't think we're going to see too much intergender stuff. I think like we'll see like mixed match challenge level of intergender interaction where, you know, they hit spots on one another, but it's largely the women taking out the men. And that stinks because I think there'd be a lot of really great intergender matchups, just pure wrestling matchups. You know, I'd love to see Charlotte Flair take on AJ Styles. I'd see Charlotte mix it up with anybody. Becky Lynch mix it up with anybody. Nia Jax mix it up with some of the, you know, like we got a brief taste of what she could do with the guys at the Royal Rumble. But like I said, I don't think they're gonna go, and like you said too, I don't think they're gonna go too far down that road. I don't think we're gonna get to a point where it's completely intergender. Everything is sort of mixed in together, but I think we'll see, I guess, more and more like brief one-offs, like spots of it that we've seen before. I think that's the way it's gonna go.
In a WWE land, do you more so see it as predominantly women getting more of the advantage? And do you more so also see it as if WWE were to go down this road, it would only be someone with like a Nia Jax?
It's tough. I think that you have to have someone like Nia, like someone of a certain, you know, gravity and star. I think Charlotte Flair would have been a great spot. It would have been great in that spot too. I think that they have to have a certain level of star power more so than anything else. I don't know if it's like a size. I don't think it's necessarily a size thing or a realism thing. Yep. And that's people's main argument against intergender wrestling is like, oh, it's not realistic. This is wrestling though. We're watching. We're not watching let's face it, we're not watching like a real sport. We're watching entertainment. And where in the rules of entertainment can we not watch you know, a woman beat up a man? It's a very real thing. Like that's not like it's not the most far-fetched thing in the world. These women bust their chops like week in and week out. And that's a cool opportunity for them. That's going to get more eyes on them, seeing them mix it up with the guys. Like there's no doubt about that. That's going to give them more attention. I don't know why. I don't see why you'd be deprived them of it, of that sort of spotlight. I don't think we're going to get it like full force, and that's fine. It doesn't need to be something that they like force down our throats. But every so often, you know, just something like that Rumble spot, which I think was done really well, just like a little taste of the genders mixing it up. I think that'll keep a lot of people entertained.
Yeah, I agree with you. If WWE, you know, surprise us and were to do it, it would be very watered down. It wouldn't be a full intergender wrestling match, if you understand what I mean. Like It would be very watered down. But nonetheless, I like seeing it. It does make it feel a little bit special when it is not done very often. So it was fun. Even a week out, I'm still thinking about it going, that was a really cool little moment in the Rumble that Nia had. And if you look at it from a pure wrestling standpoint, Nia held her own. So, I mean, I know it was brief, but she, what she did in the ring and how she interacted with the guys, she definitely, it fit. It didn't feel weird to me. I guess that's what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah, that's the thing. It felt like it belonged. It felt like it fit. And to the people out there, and I saw this a lot in the immediate aftermath, who were complaining about it because it wasn't realistic and because she got manhandled. That was a big thing. They're like, oh, she got, she went in there they put her in there just to get beat up by a bunch of guys. One, she eliminated Mustafa Ali. She took out Orton. She took out Mysterio. She laid waste to everybody in the ring at one point. And then it took 3 finishers to get her out of the ring. It took her a super kick, a 619, and an RKO just to get her off her feet. That's pretty impressive. I don't think she got manhandled. I think she held her own just fine.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And it was, regardless, it was a fun moment. Let's go on to the next one. Let's see what... Oh, this is another all-time favorite WWE superstar and WWE female superstar.
Okay, so first off, this is the male side of things is easy, and I mentioned this. I don't know if it was just in our chats or it was on the last show, but Rey Mysterio is my all-time favorite wrestler.
Good choice.
He was in the first match I ever watched, back against Elijah Burke on a random Friday night SmackDown back in 2006. I'll never forget it. The colors of his gear, the mask, how fast he was, that all appealed to me. But also, he was 5'7", 165 pounds. The smallest guy in the ring at any given moment. And as someone growing up I was undersized for much of my childhood and my early teenage years, I was a smaller kid. So seeing this small guy mix it up with these huge behemoths and come out not only holding his own but winning matches and being consistently one of the biggest names on the card, that always was really cool to me. I always thought that he was just so fantastic in the ring. He still is, obviously.
Yeah.
And he'll always be my guy. On the other side of things, the women's side, this is a little bit tougher because it's the criteria honestly changed at some point. When I was first starting watching wrestling, I liked Tori Wilson a lot, but I'd say, and I think I could say this with pretty much. I think I could say this with a pretty reasonable amount of certainty that my favorite women's wrestler is Becky Lynch.
That's fair. It honestly is.
It's and not just for her the man stuff, because obviously this is fantastic and we're seeing the best version of Becky. But when she broke in NXT, among the 4, she was always my favorite of the 4 horsewomen.
Yep.
They broke her in as a pretty stereotypical Irish lass, but that's okay. I'm part Irish, so I appreciate that. But I always thought there was something. She's so crisp in the ring. I think she's got the most infectious personality of any of the women out there right now. Whether she's doing her stuff now, where she's a badass, she's tough, or she's bubbly and making jokes and puns. I think all versions of her have been really great, which isn't easy, and which isn't something you can say about just about anybody. So yeah, I'd say Becky Lynch, and then I don't even know who I would say number 2. I think Ember Moon might be there because I've grown on her so much over the last year or two.
Yeah, no, they're great. Ray is a great choice because, similar to you, I'm a very small person in general, so he always related to me twofold. I always liked Ray, so that's a great choice. She's a very likable person, just her personality just kind of resonates with everybody. She's just easy to like and great in-ring worker. Ember's great as well. My number 1 all-time favorite is on the men's side is always Chris Jericho. Probably always will be. Jericho is someone that constantly reinvents himself. It's hard to say what his best kind of era of work is because there's so many different versions of Chris Jericho. So Jericho to me is always number one, even in this day and age when, he's getting closer to 50 years old and he's still putting on 4 5-star matches. That's pretty incredible to me. I just think he is, in my opinion, he's one of the greatest of all time. And he would just every version of Jericho I've seemed to click with in some way, shape or form. From, his earlier days as the Ayatollah of rock and roller, all the way to his suit wearing days where, he was talking really slow and he's just, thinking is better than everyone else.
Yeah. That was my favorite Jericho. It was like the 2008 super heel, wore the suits, just made everyone I loved that
big
version.
Words, he was just so intellectually better.
He made it seem like he was so much better than you, and I loved it. I wanted him to be better than me.
Yeah, I agree with you. He was just even the stuff with Kevin Owens was absolutely brilliant. He just knows how to. He never does anything twice. Once he's kind of done with something, it's for the most part it's pretty much gone, and he leaves things without milking it dry, I guess. He's just really, I just really like Chris Jericho, and in ring wise, I just think he's one of the best. He has a great mind for the business. For the women's side, I don't know if you'll be surprised by this or not, but my all-time favorite women's wrestler is Molly Holly. Molly Holly is just an absolutely underappreciated worker in the ring. That she was just, I absolutely loved Molly Holly. She seems like the type of girl that whatever they gave her, she ran with it, she made it work, and she was just, one word that I always use to describe, when I say Molly Holly, people are like, really, Molly Holly? But her ring work is solid. She never did anything, I'm not saying she did anything crazy, but she never did anything that made her look bad. She was always so giving in the ring. She is someone that could bring people up. She always put people over. And I just loved, she was so almost to the sense of, I don't mean this in a nasty way, but almost so plain and so boring to a certain degree in just her terms of the way she talked and stuff like that. I loved that. Especially as weird to say as a kid, 9, 10 years old, loving Molly Holly. It's probably not someone that everyone would have, gravitated towards, but I always did, especially as I started to appreciate wrestling. You go back and watch Molly's work and it's,
it holds up.
Yeah, it holds up. And, it was fun to see her in the Royal Rumble and at Evolution. I just think she's just, in my opinion, it's female-wise, a very underappreciated worker. Underrated.
Oh. The thing with Molly Holly is that because of the era in which she was in and the way we associate women's wrestling with the past, she's one of those who gets sort of like left out in the cold because she was a very solid's like the perfect word. She was a solid worker. She did everything right. She didn't come out and like put on classics, but she very rarely had a bad match. Yeah. She very rarely did bad, for herself. And she's one of those women that like gets caught just sort of lost in the shuffle because she came in an era where we associated women's wrestling with, the scandalous aspects of it as opposed to the ring work. Like Molly Holly, Jazz, and Jacqueline. Like those are some very talented women who just were in the wrong time.
Yeah, and not only that is like, okay, we think about that era of women, it's Trish and Lita, but underneath that, it was always Molly. Molly was always, the heel to step in. She had 2 or 3 women's championship reigns. She was always that. If Trish was the top heel, Molly was number 2. If Lita was the top heel, Molly was number 2. Molly was always ready to slip into that slot when they couldn't have Trish and Lita, in a program together or they were doing other things. Molly was always the next one, and, you had others as well, like you mentioned, Jazz and Victoria. Victoria's another one for me that gets greatly underappreciated for the work that she did. But yeah, Molly was always there. And for some reason, I don't know why, I always love Molly Holly's theme music, and I just lose my mind when that song comes on in my Spotify playlist, and I'm like, hell yeah, it's Molly Holly. Like, I'm ready to hear Molly's song. I don't know why, I just always did. But Molly was always that kind of one. From right now, Becky's, it's hard to say against Becky, because she's just so good. But I am one of those people that I'm a very big fan of Mandy Rose, and I am not afraid to admit it.
I did know that. Hey, that's okay. There's someone for everybody, and Mandy Rose she's pretty. I don't know if I'd call her underrated in the ring, but she's not bad. She's definitely not as bad as people probably think. Just by I think with the eye test with her, people are like, oh, she probably can't wrestle. She looks like one of Vince's girls.
Yep.
But she could go. Those knee strikes she delivers, I always like those.
Yeah, not only that is that.
I think her and Deville, especially since they got moved to SmackDown, have done really well for themselves, carving a niche.
Yeah, and not only that, people are always quick to assume because of the way she looks that, oh, this girl probably can't wrestle, but really, Mandy hasn't had too many opportunities to show what she can do. So how are people to judge? She's, obviously she's had matches, she's had, bigger opportunities here and there, but Mandy has never had an opportunity to really have a one-on-one kind of big-time match with, the upper echelons of girls in terms of things. So I just am a big fan of Mandy Rose. I think she has a certain presence, and she's almost, to me, she is a diva. So it almost is the anti of what we're going against now. She's the perfect foil for these quote-unquote women's wrestlers. She is the perception of what it used to be. And I just think she's a perfect heel for some of these girls. Maybe not a Mania level, but
realistic heel you could have in this era.
Yeah,
someone who people are gonna look like you said, people are gonna look at her and say, oh, she probably can't wrestle. That's the best way to get yourself over as a heel nowadays, is to be like that, is to be a diva, like you put it, because we've soured so much on that particular era, and I think it's a very smart thing to do on her part, like very real heat you can get by not wrestling. And then that's not to say she can't wrestle, but she hasn't really. I think it's almost on purpose that they're not displaying her athletics, because she's incredibly athletic. But they haven't strong. They haven't gone out of their way to showcase that. I think that's on purpose, because that's how you get people to hate you, is by not being a good, not wrestling in this day and age. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And when they do decide, to maybe give her, a little bit more of a push towards other things and higher, in higher programs, this girl's going to get incredible heat. Like, people are not going to like her at all. Could you imagine a moment if she beat, I don't know, a Becky Lynch, a Charlotte Flair, a Sasha Banks for a women's championship one day?
People would revolt.
Yeah, exactly. And I would be sitting there clapping along saying, bravo.
Congratulations.
I'm just a big... I don't know. Ever since Mandy was on Tough Enough, obviously she's a very attractive lady. You look at her and you go, okay, you can put this girl on a poster. Vince McMahon would probably like her. But just to see where she's come from the Tough Enough days to, now on SmackDown, by all means, I don't think she's the greatest worker in the world. I don't think she's the greatest promo in the world. But, I mean, for someone who is a wrestling fan at heart, I see the appeal, and I definitely, I don't know about you, but this year I see Mandy Rose in a title picture, whether it's SmackDown or Raw, or holding the tag team championships. I think that woman's wearing gold before the end of the year.
Ooh, okay, I like that. I personally think that they should hold the tag titles at some point this year.
Yeah.
I think Rose and Deville have done so well. They're so underappreciated. I think they've done terrific things. I think both of them will be women's champions too at some point. I'm a big Sonya Deville fan, so I'd love to see. I think a potential feud between the two somewhere down the road, because you have to imagine at some point they're going to split off and do their own thing. And I think a feud between the two would be very good as well.
Yes, Sonya is someone who I think, honestly, because so many people love to hate Mandy Rose, and they talk about Mandy Rose, some people push Sonya to the side. Sonya Deville is really good. And And I've had conversations just with people that watch wrestling around here, and they don't see that in Sonya Deville. I do. I definitely see a bright future for her. Very underappreciated, especially out of the two. You don't talk about Sonya Deville enough.
Yeah. Yeah, honest to God. I think she's going to have big things in her future sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of the Women's Tag Team Championships, it was one in here anyway. It kind of transitions well.
Okay.
The Women's Tag titles. I don't know if you've known this about me or, So, we've been talking about Women's Tag Team titles for quite some time. It's been since, middle of last year, earlier, whatever. But you're very much aware of this. I love women's wrestling. I love what they bring. I think they are the best thing going. I haven't been the strongest advocate of women's tag team titles. The only reason is, and feel free to disagree, but I think that besides the maybe 4 or 5 core women's tag teams they have, there isn't enough depth to just, they're just throwing, I don't want them just throwing people together because it's something for them to do here, go for the tag titles. I've said to you before, I'm not the biggest fan of tag team wrestling as it is. I do think in theory it's a great idea because the women definitely deserve to have more championships in their division. I just don't think there's enough depth to, rotate around teams without it becoming stale. We don't know the actual, idea of the women's tag team championships. Can they appear on any brand? Is it, I would assume that they can appear on any brand if they win the women's tag team championships, but we haven't been told that. We don't know what the kind of plan is. I just think without, Sasha and Bayley, yeah, they're a team. You've got Mandy Rose and Sonya, the Iconics, and Nia and Tamina, and the Riot Squad, of course. But then you see teams like we're having on Raw, we're having Alicia Fox and Nikki Cross, like, they've never teamed before together. Dana Brooke and Natalia, they've never really teamed before together. There was, some rumblings of Naomi and Carmella. They've never really been a team together. I just don't want it to be a thing of there's nothing else for these girls to do, so we'll just throw them in a team and they can go for the tag team championships. That, to me, isn't what tag team wrestling is about. It's about teams that work for the tag team championships, like a Sasha Banks and a Bayley or the Iconics, those teams. I just think, regardless of what I think, I do agree with the fact that there's women's tag team championships. I'm not a hater of it at all. Don't take it like that, but I guess I just have my reservations. But what's your kind of opinion on the women's tag team championships coming in?
So I hear what you're saying, and I agree to a certain extent with right now. It feels a little with some of the teams they've had outside of those core tag teams, the cobbled together duos. I feel like maybe they're rushing it a little bit, but I think with the influx of talent that WWE brings in, I think sooner or later they will have the depth to where this feels more natural. Like, I don't want them to just be throwing teams together just to compete for the titles, and I certainly don't want them to be like we have nothing for you, so let's do this. But I do think that it's a cool I think it's a cool, necessary step for them to take because there are lots of women who are going to be left out of the title picture. And while the picture's sort of being hoarded by the Rouseys and the 4 Horsewomen, it is nice for there to be something else to compete for.
Yeah,
and I think this is going to be a title for the the Iconics of the world, the Riot Squads, the Absolutions, who they may not be in the main title picture yet. I think they will be, but they have a background together as a team. I love the Riot Squad, for instance, because I think they're a great team. I think they'd make great tag team champions for right off the bat. I'm going to be pulling for them in the chamber. Actually, they're my team. But for every Riot Squad, you have a team. Even like Nia and Tamina, it just feels like they're the 2 biggest ones there. Let's put them together. It doesn't feel like they belong. Like they have any reason to tag up other than we're the 2 biggest women, most dominant, imposing women here. But like Bayley and Sasha is a great tag team because they're clearly great friends and they've been doing that. They've been basically a tag team for like 2 years now.
Yeah.
Even as much as I wanted them to turn at some point, and I still think they will. They don't happen, but I think they're going to run with the belts first before they split on each other. And I think it's interesting because there are two ways to look at who you want to crown as the first tag team champs here. You either want a strong team, an established team, or you want like a young team to put them over. I think it would be huge for like a team like the Riot Squad, the Iconics, or DeVille and Rose to win over a team like Sasha and Bayley. I don't want Sasha and Bayley to win because I think I think they've accomplished so much already, and they're more. I think that beating them for the belts would carry such a huge rub for somebody, as opposed to them being the first tag team champs. I don't want to see Sasha and Bayley be the first champs.
Me either. I completely agree with you. I think it's almost to the point where it's too obvious that they're going to be the first tag team champions. So, change it up a little bit.
Yeah, and like any other team in there, again, if DeVille and Rose win, I'm going to be happy. If the Iconics win, I'll be pleasantly surprised. But I think the Riot Squad, I love the Riot Squad. I love all three of them. I think they all bring really unique skill sets and really different things to the table. And I think it'd be a good spotlight for Logan and Morgan to have some sort of success on their own while still being under the Riot Squad umbrella.
Yeah, I agree. I love the Riot Squad. Now, obviously, you're probably not going to be surprised. I'm pulling for the Iconics. I want the Iconics to win. I think their work in NXT was so. I just think they're just really good heels. They're really good at being annoying. And, you're not meant to like these girls. Sure, their main roster stuff has been, it's, I don't know the word, maybe a little underwhelming, but they know their spot. And sure, they could have been used a little bit more frequently, but they know their spot and they play that role very well. I thought they did a fantastic job in the Rumble, Billy and Peyton. Obviously, I'm a little biased towards them, but, I mean, why is it so out of the picture that they are the first the women's tag team champions? Like, why would that? And I've seen a lot of comments. Like, I sometimes will, sit up in bed and just, you see the WWE post and you just scroll through and you see all the stupid comments, but then you see some, some smart ones in there as well. But a lot of people are like, the Iconics are not going to win the Chamber. They're just not happening. I would love to see the Iconics win. They are, to me, like the Riot Squad, they're a tag team. They are a team. They are stronger together than they are apart. Sasha and Bayley, to me, are stronger apart than they are together. So
yes, that's a great point. That's like what I'm saying about them is that I think they're I think they're not fit for the tag title picture. I think they're fit to do things on their own.
Yeah, because a tag team to me is like the Usos, the New Day. They're stronger together. If you break them up, it's not valuable to them or to the company. Banks and Bayley, you break them up, and there's so many things you can do with them. You break the Iconics up, or to a certain degree, the Riot Squad up, and there may be not as much you can do with all members of the Riot Squad or both members of the Iconics. That to me is that's what a tag team is. I know I've said I haven't been the strongest, advocate of tag team wrestling. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I understand it, and I definitely see it has a very strong place, and I think it could be utilized a lot better in general in WWE. So I do see its appeal, and I definitely get why people love it and gravitate towards it so much. But a tag team to me is two people that you look at together and you go, okay, they're a team. They are better together than they are apart. So I just think I would personally love to see the Iconics or the Riot Squad take this out, or even Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, as opposed to Banks and Bayley. However, if I was a betting man, I'd probably put my money on Banks and Bayley.
Yeah, it feels like you said before. It feels almost obvious that they're going to be the ones to christen the new belts, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not. Again, I'm not going to complain about it. I think that just getting the belts off the ground is big, and whoever wins is going to do good things with them. But could you imagine the heat? If you want heat, put the belts on the Iconics, because They might be the most tenured of these tag teams. They've been together since NXT. No one else could really say that here.
No. And I just love the Iconics. I just, obviously I'm always
going to hate them. They're so effective at what they do. It's unfair to say that they stink because, like, they're supposed to stink.
Yeah, that's what their characters are. And both of those ladies can get it done in the ring. I think world of Peyton Royce. I think Peyton is really, really good in the ring and very underutilized. Billy's good as well. But the stronger worker of the two, I think, is Peyton. But like I said, they're better together than they would be apart.
Yeah. So they found a role for themselves as a team. Yes.
It's just that, yeah. Obviously, I'm going to be pulling for them, but other than that, I love the Riots. I agree with you. I think the Riot Squad are a very, very good core team, or core stable, especially for Liv and Sarah to get this opportunity as opposed to Ruby and one of the girls. I just think Ruby is obviously the leader, in the title. Her name is in the title of their group, but it almost is to a point where it's Ruby is almost teaching them things. Ruby is a fantastic worker, and I hope and pray that she's a women's champion one day because she's very, very good. And it is clear that, it's Ruby and then Liv and Sarah are slightly beneath her, just in terms of leadership and stuff like that. So it is why wouldn't the goal be for Ruby to be the women's champion and Liv and Sarah to be the tag team champions, and they own the division? But I do agree with you, the Riot Squad, why they are used, I think they could be probably doing a little bit more.
I agree. I think that there's more for them to do. I really hope that I'm intrigued to see where they go post Elimination Chamber, because as much as I want them to win the belts, we've gone through it and we've said multiple times here that we think Bayley and Sasha are going to win the belts.
Yeah.
So where does the Riot Squad go after that? Because they've been together a while, and it doesn't really seem like they do much. They haven't done much other than just wreak havoc. But there hasn't been much storyline work for them, and I want them to be more involved in stories and more involved in. I want Ruby to be involved in the title picture. I want them to be elevated.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you completely. We'll move on. We'll do a couple more before we wrap things up. What do we got here? Oh, I'm sure you'll have your opinion on this one. CM Punk. Okay, first, before we talk about his exit and the way he's kind of treated pro wrestling after, what did you think of CM Punk during wrestling?
I liked him. I was never insanely high on him. Honestly, I never really was, from his days in ECW all the way through the big title run, all the way to his exit. I was never a crazy CM Punk fan. I think my favorite incarnation of Punk was Straight Edge Savior, when he would just cut all the very Jesus-like promos.
That was good.
He looked like Jesus, and he converted Luke Gallows and Serena to the Straight Edge lifestyle. That was my favorite version.
Underrated stuff, by the way. Sorry to chime in,
really
but just real. It was almost to the point where it was kind of on SmackDown at that time, when SmackDown wasn't really, the most important thing. It was just kind of shoved to the side, but very good stuff.
Yeah, but but like I said, never crazy about him. The whole time he was WWE champion, I was never wow, I'm really, really into this guy. So that's my take on CM Punk, on his career, on his WWE tenure.
For me, I'm pretty much the same. I liked Punk. I thought he was... honestly, everyone said, he was absolutely incredible in the ring. I never really saw that. Why, I thought he was pretty good. I don't think he was amazing. His promos were obviously great. He was a great talker. That, all that stuff, with the pipe bomb and then him winning the championship at Money in the Bank, stellar top tier stuff. Always will say that. It was a fantastic moment. What they did after was what it was. It kind of soured for me a little bit, but I'm the same. His Straight Edge Society stuff was fantastic. But yeah, I was never really his number one fan. Going on to him, the way we'll never know the full story. We'll never know exactly what happened, but his exit from WWE, firstly, do you agree with it? And do you agree with his attitude towards wrestling in general in 2019?
No, I don't. I think that this is a business that gave him so much, and he's like spitting on it. You know, he's so jaded about it because, you know, he got hurt a couple times working. Like this isn't ballet, as our guy JR would say. This is, you know, tough physical competition. I don't know. I just don't understand why he decided to. Obviously, he was unhappy with his place in WWE. That's fine. I mean, he was WWE champion for over a year. Didn't really main event. So I get that. I get the frustration that he wasn't the biggest draw, and that guys like The Rock and Cena were coming and taking some of the spotlight. But it's not like he ever had it really that bad. At least in my estimation, I always thought he had something to do. It was always clear that they were pretty high on him. Even the very end with the Shield stuff, when he was working with the Shield and, you know, he was working with the Authority and Kane, it was, you know, still like one of the top feuds, top sort of billing on the card. I never really got his whole thing about, oh, you know, he was mistreated, they treated him wrong, all this stuff. I never it came off like sour grapes for me. It's for a business that, like, you know, it made him.
Yeah, that's how he, you know, people wouldn't have known him going into UFC if he wasn't a WWE superstar. He was, you know, a top tier talent in the WWE. You don't, you know, spit on what you've done in the past because you're in a different spot now. Sure, you can have your opinions and, you know, maybe not necessarily agree with, you know, or even like the pro wrestling business. But he's just completely, basically shit on everything he's done. I know this is a question that everyone kind of asks, and I always will give the same answer, but do you personally ever see him back in, maybe not a WWE ring, but in a wrestling ring? Do you see CM Punk wrestling ever again?
I actually think, I have a feeling that he will. Now, maybe not in WWE. I have a feeling that somewhere along the line, the money will be right. Someone will offer him something. And I think it'll be extremely hypocritical of him. But I don't think much of him as a person anymore. I think he's just from some of his interactions with fans and some of the things I see online. I'm not a big fan of CM Punk the person. So I think that he's gonna go. I think that it would be him going back on like a lot of things he said to rejoin wrestling. But I think he will actually.
I personally, I don't see it happening, but I definitely see your point. Money talks. At the end of the day, money talks for any of us, I think. And, you know, Punk's UFC career was what it was.
It was bad.
Yeah, plain and simple, it was not good. I remember watching, I don't believe I watched his first fight, but I definitely 100% watched his second fight, and he got his ass handed to him.
Yeah.
You know, I think he's doing is he a commentator now for MMA, or I don't know, but
honestly, I'm pretty sure he is. I would be lying if I said I really cared at this point about what he's doing. I watched that second fight. Again, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't watching that fight with a grin on my face.
Oh, me too.
I felt like he had it coming, but he was never cut out for that. It was almost like a publicity thing for the UFC. It backfired. A lot of people were really upset about that. I know, especially after the second fight, people were really like big MMA fans were up in arms about the fact that he got a spot on the card at all. Yeah. Again, he was going to make money for the UFC, but I think after two fights where he just got destroyed, the well has run out for him. So I think, yeah, commentating is what he does. He's good at it. He had a commentary run for WWE when he was injured. Pretty good at it. But I don't like him anymore, man.
I don't.
He really hurt he hurt my feelings basically by dumping on the WWE and dumping on wrestling.
I agree. Anyone that kind of does that, I love wrestling so much that it offends me to a certain degree, especially with someone who had such a high standard of his work. You know, he obviously cared about wrestling, I think, when he was here. But I'm the same. It's left such a sour taste in my mouth that I almost don't give a damn what he does. Sure, it'll be, if he does decide to come back to wrestling, it will be a rather big deal, I'm sure. But I don't know. I'm the same as you. He's left a very bad taste in my mouth just with how he is, how he's treated the business. And, a lot of people say about his personality when he was actually in WWE, and it's hard not to believe that now because, just how he treats wrestling now. I could imagine him probably treating people in the business rather similarly.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll do maybe one or two more, but let's see. Ooh. NXT. Do you think it's still the hippest brand within the WWE? I know that a lot of people, it's producing quality stuff, but do you think it was cooler maybe 2 or 3 years ago with some of the stars that they had? Or do you think it's just evolving and that's just the way NXT goes?
I just think that it's almost impossible to touch what NXT did like 2-3 years ago because it was completely brand new at the time. I don't think it's gotten worse. I think NXT has been consistently the best wrestling in WWE. I think it's still the coolest brand in WWE for sure. Especially because Raw sucks and SmackDown's good, but I don't think it compares to NXT. I think week in and week out, the quality of product, not just the wrestling. I think the backstage work they do, the interviews. I think the commentary in NXT is top notch. I really think they do everything really well down there. I just think it's maybe not as hot as it was 2 years ago because 2 years ago, 2, 3, 4 years ago, it exploded onto the scene. It was something we hadn't seen before because NXT originally was just developmental. Well, first it was that game show, and then that was awful, and then it was purely developmental, and then it morphed into something else. It morphed into its own little thing while still being developmental, and I think that. I think it hasn't gone down in quality. I just think we're used to it by now.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think we hold NXT to too much of a high standard, or do you think that's a good thing?
I think it's a good thing, but I definitely think we hold it to an almost impossibly high standard. Just look at TakeOver Phoenix that a lot of people didn't like because it wasn't blow away amazing. Because we've just come to expect that from NXT. We've come to expect the best show on any given weekend is going to be an NXT TakeOver, and you could still make the case that it was on Royal Rumble weekend. I like the Rumble a little bit more because it's the Rumble, it's fun. But NXT TakeOver was brilliant, but it wasn't quite as brilliant, and in that regard, it felt lackluster almost, which is crazy because we think of it so highly.
Yeah, I agree because I was even a person that said I genuinely liked TakeOver Phoenix, but I was definitely a person that said it wasn't mind-blowing like, a lot of the takeovers are, and that's, I guess, the double-ended sword with things is I want to hold it to a high standard because 9 times out of the 10, they blow my expectations, and Phoenix maybe didn't in terms of everything, but I mean it's a good problem to have in my opinion.
Yeah, it really is. It's your wrestling is too good almost. That's a great problem to have. Yeah, and if TakeOver Phoenix on a rewatch because when I watched it originally I was like, wow, that was great. But it wasn't quite up to standards. And then I rewatched it. And I'm like, this was really good. You just have to watch it as its own thing and not as a sequel.
Show. Yeah, a hype show.
If you're able to remove yourself from some of that hype and pomp and circumstance, you'll realize it was a really great wrestling show.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I kind of went through some of these because this will probably be our last one, and I just wanted to pick out one that's fitting for the time. It's WrestleMania season. In your opinion, what is the greatest WrestleMania of all time?
Oh my god!
I knew that would be a stump. I knew that would stump you, and that's what I was looking for.
You're gonna have me here for another 2 hours just on this question alone. Okay, there's definitely the answer that most people go with. I think a lot of people would say WrestleMania 17.
Yes.
Very good show. I will say I've gone back and watched over the course of the years since the network came out. I have been able to watch every WrestleMania at some point so I have at least the basis knowledge of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, again, maybe this is more my favorite than the greatest, but I thought WrestleMania 31 was fantastic. That's my personal favorite WrestleMania. I don't know about greatest, but at least in my lifetime, because I started watching wrestling in 06. So that's what, WrestleMania 22. And I love 22 because Rey Mysterio won the world title there. But I wouldn't hold it up as one of the all-time greats. I thought 21 was really good. I thought, I'm trying to think, 23 I thought was good. But I obviously have a recency bias because I wasn't there to watch WrestleMania 17 because I was only 5 years old and wasn't a fan yet. I wasn't there to watch WrestleMania 3 because I was not born.
Me either.
I wasn't. Yeah, I just wasn't. I wasn't there, and for that reason, that those aren't going to hold as much. I'm not going to hold those in such high esteem as I do the ones that I've been able to watch live. So for me, it's 31. I thought I didn't think there was a bad match on the card. I thought the coolest spots were amazing. The main event was amazing. It's crazy, like Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns. You hear that on paper now, and you're like, that must have been terrible, but it was so good.
Yep, it was the first of their kind of, go round, and there wasn't an expectation of what it's going to be like, and there was so much, stuff surrounding it that you really weren't sure what was, gonna go down, and then the way it did. 31 is a really good WrestleMania. Like I've said many times, wrestling is so subjective, and that's what I love about it. And I think with you and me, what we've kind of, the couple conversations that we've had, we pick up on, when I say my favorite, you kind of are like, yeah, I understand why. And when you say your favorite, I'm like, yeah, I understand why. That's what kind of works the best between us. And WrestleMania 31 is a great WrestleMania. It's a very solid WrestleMania. Like you said, there's not any bad matches on that card. And the stuff that was amazing was amazing. My personal favorite WrestleMania is WrestleMania 24. I love WrestleMania 24. Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, Edge, Taker.
The waterworks for that Flair Michaels match. Going back, every time I go back and watch that, and I make it a point during Mania Season 2, if I can't watch all of 24, which I try to because Taker Edge was great.
The Money in the Bank on that show was fantastic.
Yeah, Money in the Bank was very good. The main events were good. Solid. I enjoyed it, but that that Michaels Flair match every time gets me.
Oh, me too. It is
the storytelling was so prime.
One of the best storytelling elements in a match I think I've ever seen. There's some that rival it, but I love that match, and it's not one of my personal favorite matches of all time, but I loved that match. WrestleMania 24 is always one up there. I loved WrestleMania 19 was fantastic. I loved WrestleMania 19. 17 is easy to say. It is a very, very
I feel
great...
like 17 is like the given answer.
It is a great WrestleMania. There's no doubt about that at all. I was young. I don't remember watching it live. I may have, but it is a very, solid answer that, a lot of wrestling fans give. And that's fine because it is a very good WrestleMania. You had TLC, Taker and Triple H, Austin Rock. It just had a lot of... The whole card itself was fantastic. Going into WrestleMania, we talked about Reverb Rewind. That'll probably be one that is an option to pick, and it'll probably be more than likely that we'll probably be watching that, and I don't have a problem with that at all, because...
No, me neither. I'm not gonna complain about it, that's for sure.
Very good. 22, you brought up 22. I loved 22. So there was a year where my parents had separated, so I ended up living with my dad, and we moved away, and we didn't have cable TV, so I couldn't watch wrestling for most of 2006. So I missed 22, but I remember going back and watching 20. Obviously, I kept up through siblings and stuff like that, and when I would see my mama, she would always have it, so I'd watch it. But for the most part, I was out of wrestling for 6-7 months. I remember going back and watching 22, and Edge and Mick Foley is my second favorite all-time match. I love that match. It was my favorite match for the longest time.
Brutal.
I love
Brutal
that just everything in that match. It wasn't ridiculously long. It did what it did in the time that it was given. The stuff with Lita was fantastic, and Edge was just great, and Foley finally got his WrestleMania moment. The spear through the table, just great stuff. Edge was fantastic. I just thought that was a breakout moment for Edge. I really, really did. He had his Money in the Bank win, and he cashed in, lost the championship 3 weeks later, and it was kind of,
Yeah, that was kind of weird the way they did that. Going back and watching it now, he cashes in at Revolution, loses it at the Rumble.
Yeah, it was just odd, and I don't really understand, the meaning behind it. And I think Foley is someone, like I said, he hadn't really had a stellar WrestleMania performance. It wasn't really something on Foley's criteria. He had very great, memorable moments that we'll never forget, but Mania is a different beast. Everyone wants their WrestleMania moment, and I think this was not only for for Edge to be, hey, it's Edge, I'm here too. I was the WWE champion for 3 weeks, and I got kind of crapped on. I should be the WWE champion. This was a great moment for him, but also for Foley needing that WrestleMania moment very much at the end of his career. He'd come back for a little while, but he needed that just as much as Edge, and I just think it just gelled so perfectly. Obviously, when you have Hardcore with Mick Foley in it, it's going to be something that you don't want to miss.
Yeah.
But it was just that match. I loved Mickie James, Trish Stratus. That was a fantastic story.
Very good match. Sneaky good match.
In terms of women's matches at Mania, at that point, there wasn't really many fantastic women's matches. That was up there, in my opinion.
Yes.
Great match. Mickie James was just incredible in that match. It was, towards the end of Trish's run as well, so she was kind of winding down. It was a fantastic one-on-one match for her to have at Mania. There was so many things at WrestleMania 22 that I just loved. You mentioned Rey Mysterio winning. That was great. Cena and Triple H was pretty good. I remember liking that. I do actually like WrestleMania 22 when I go back and think about it. But WrestleMania's, we talk about like our favorites. Do you have in your mind, like a least favorite that you just remember not enjoying at all?
Let's think. Let's go down the list here. Last year's I thought was average. 34, 30,
really?
33 I liked. Yeah, I wasn't crazy about last year's WrestleMania.
I actually really, for the most part, I really enjoyed WrestleMania last year. But, I mean, we say that, but I think to a certain part of wrestling fans, we hold WrestleMania in a certain aura. So I think even a bad Mania gets looked over sometimes. Not saying WrestleMania 34 was bad, but, I mean, to your point, I do see what's kind of in your brain with that one. But, go on.
I think 27, just because of the main event. I mean, nowadays, if the Miz main event's WrestleMania this year, I'll be tickled pink.
Yeah.
But at that point, it just wasn't right. And you had the main event, Cena Miz, and then The Rock got involved, and it just felt like a placeholder for Cena Rock. And that whole show really, I can only remember one match off that show that I really liked, and that was Triple H Taker. And like, you're not gonna not like an Undertaker match at this point.
No,
he puts on classics every year. That was a very good match, but I really that was one that I remember watching and thinking like, well, that wasn't that great.
I didn't like 27. I hated 29. I hated WrestleMania 29.
29, very, I guess average. There were some highlights, and I didn't mind Cena Rock. Punk Taker was good.
Punk Taker was good, I will admit that.
And there was that Triple H Lesnar match was boring.
Hated that match.
Can't really remember much of the mid card.
Chris Jericho and Fandango wrestled. Like,
that's
that.
right.
I hated that. No disrespect to Fandango, but like Chris Jericho, like you're gonna give a WrestleMania match with Chris Jericho to Fandango, and like I knew from the start that Chris Jericho was not going to win that match, and like I was just biasly, I hated that because I was like, Jericho deserves probably more than this. I understand putting over new talent and stuff like that, but at WrestleMania,
that was extreme. Oh, like that was crazy.
And I just remember not liking that WrestleMania at all. 27, I didn't like. Other than that, I can't really think of. Yeah, it's almost harder to think of ones that you didn't like than you liked, because I feel like WrestleMania, there's more that I like than I don't.
Definitely. I always tend to, I very rarely dislike WrestleMania. I will always point to something on a card. There's always something. Like last year, I wasn't like a huge fan of 34, like I said, but there was some good stuff on there. Definitely some good stuff. I thought the first like half of the show was pretty good.
I do agree with that. The first half of the show was way better than the second half of the show because
I thought it lost some steam for sure.
Yeah, like the Triple Threat Intercontinental Championship match was fantastic. Charlotte and Asuka, I thought, was really, really good. Ronda's that mixed tag match was fantastic.
Ronda.
I thought that
it had so much energy early on in the show, and then I thought it lost it. And you had Braun tagging with
that wasn't fun. Nope.
Cena Taker was kind of fun, but like also just kind of not what you'd expect.
Odd.
That's odd. A good word for it. The Daniel Bryan Shane stuff I didn't care for.
Yeah,
I know it was Bryan on Mania, and that's fine. And obviously Daniel Bryan, if able, should be on every WrestleMania.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I wasn't crazy about it.
The second half of the show, I think we had like Nia Jackson, Alexa Bliss. I wasn't crazy hot about that match. The main event was what it was. I think we had a certain level of expectation going into that to what was going to happen, and it didn't. But it was, very drawn out, that main event. I think it probably ran way too long, in my opinion. At least the main event. But the show was long. It's hard to keep absolutely everyone invested in that show for, I think it was probably 5 hours. Well, with the kickoff, it would have been about 7 hours.
I was going to say, definitely like 7 hours from kickoff till end of the show.
It's a long show to watch. Like here in Australia, I would have been up since 6:30 in the morning. So,
good God.
So like 6:30 until 2:30 in the afternoon, or whatever it is, 1:30, whatever. It's a long show regardless. That's a
full shift. Yeah.
It's literally, like you said. But now that we're talking about times, Rumble was a long show. And I think I mentioned this to you, whether it was on the show or in our pre-chat. Rumble and Mania is the exception to the rule when I think no matter how long it is, I'm going to watch it and I'm going to enjoy it. Sure, I'll lose steam in it at some point and I'll pick and choose my spots to do that. But other than WrestleMania and Royal Rumble, I don't see the need for WWE putting on a 7-hour show.
No, it's absurd. And they're going to do it with SummerSlam and Survivor Series. Like they've been branching out with those shows too. But I think that if you're going to go that crazy, you have to limit it to stuff that people are like. You're going to have mainstream attention on the Rumble and on WrestleMania. So if you want to add as much to those as you can, I get it. But you got to leave some of it alone and keep. You got to be. More is not always great. Usually it is, especially for wrestling, but not all the time, and not when you're putting fans to sleep.
No way. Like, there's no way in hell I'd want to see a 7-hour Elimination Chamber show. Like, I would probably skip the kickoff if that was the case.
I'd probably skip half the show.
But Mania, Rumble, I understand. Like, that I'll happily be like, okay, like, it's Mania, it's Rumble, I'll watch this in its entirety. But other than that, I don't want to be seeing, 5-hour backlashes or whatever it may be. But like you said, I love wrestling. I'm happily going to watch more of it whenever they kind of give it to me. But sometimes less is more. I know it's a cliche saying, but leave people wanting more. Like, don't throw your eggs in one basket in a 7-hour show. It's a long time to ask anyone to watch anything. I know I said this was the last one, but there's one that's staring at me. And I have to ask you.
Lay it on me.
Do you think The Undertaker has wrestled his last match?
No. No, I don't. I think they're gonna keep. I wish he had. And like I said earlier in the show, I had mapped that out where I thought he should have been done after WrestleMania 28. Here we are heading into WrestleMania 35, but I have a feeling he's not done. It's just the allure and the temptation of other wrestlers. Like, he's only got to work one show. He's only got to work WrestleMania, and people want to see it. I think people still want to see it. I'd be lying if I said that. Like, I don't get psyched when the Undertaker's name pops up, even though he's past his prime.
Oh yeah.
But I think we're gonna see more Undertaker.
I agree with you. I think what kind of... Okay, so I was always that person of like, yeah, Taker's got a couple more left in him. He's certainly got manias left in him, especially with, with Cena last year and stuff like that. I think what kind of has turned my opinion on it is... Okay, so everyone wants the idea left in their brain of what The Undertaker was, and you don't want to ever see him wrestle too much longer because you don't want the last impression of him to be, he's not at all going in a very good way, and, he's finding it hard to move and stuff like that. So that being said, I think Crown Jewel put me off a lot because that tag match, take away anything else about Crown Jewel and the shit surrounding that, but I think that match itself I understand Triple H got injured early and that doesn't help, but I just think that match was just not very good. No one really held their own in it. Kane is way past his prime, in my opinion. He can't really keep up with anything. Shawn Michaels hadn't been in the ring in 8 years or whatever it was. And I was always under the thing that Shawn Michaels should have never wrestled again.
I can't believe that he came out of retirement. One of the only guys in wrestling to actually honor the word retirement. Mm-hmm. And he came out of retirement for a match in 2018 in Saudi Arabia, a tag match against the Brothers of Destruction. And it was bad. I won't mince words. It was a boring match.
It was that whole show to me was just crap.
Oh yeah, Crown Jewel was a show.
Oh, it was terrible. But on paper you look at that match and but then you actually see them and Triple H, okay, yeah, sure, he can still go, but like I said, he got hurt early in the match. Taker shouldn't be wrestling matches that are that, in length, that long in length, especially when his partner is probably just doing just as bad as him in terms of being able to keep up a certain level. I think Taker probably works better than Kane. Shawn Michaels wrestling, like I said, I didn't think he would ever wrestle again. Well, I was certainly in the opinion of he shouldn't. It was a perfect ending. But if he was going to, why that? Why a tag match, and stuff like that? Do I think Shawn Michaels did terrible in the ring? No, I don't think he did. And I think if he wanted,
he looked like I expected him to look for having been just out of practice.
Yeah.
He's still Shawn Michaels.
If he got into the system again, I'm pretty sure he could probably get another 2 or 3 really good matches out of Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels is, even a bad version of Shawn Michaels is still really good.
Yes.
He's just one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. But just back to Taker, that kind of soured on, I don't want that to be my lasting impression of The Undertaker. For that reason only, I think he's got one more. I don't honestly think it's this year. I don't think we're seeing Taker at Mania this year. I don't see where he would fit. I don't see who he would work. But I do see him for that reason alone, personal preference. I want to see a Mania match that has so much hype that it almost outdoes whatever happens within the ring. But I don't see him wrestling more than one match. One more match.
I think that you're right. I think that I can't let that Crown Jewel match be the last Undertaker match I've seen.
No.
I don't know if the WWE has the restraint to leave him off the card, though. I don't know. I don't see a fit for him for WrestleMania. I don't know who he would work. I don't know. There's not a lot of great appealing options at this point.
No.
But I'm skeptical that the WWE would miss out on a chance to put him there. Because, you attach Undertaker's name to the show, even at his age and in this day and age, it's still going to draw a crowd.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that. So in a theoretical world where The Undertaker's wrestling his last match, maybe they announce it's his last match or whatever. We just know going in that it's his last match. Do you see it being anywhere else other than WrestleMania?
No, it would be a disservice to his legacy if it was anywhere else.
I agree. I just don't. It's the biggest stage WWE has is WrestleMania. It is, in my opinion, the greatest character in wrestling history, if anything else. And he is so associated with WrestleMania, obviously with the streak and stuff. So, it would feel very, anywhere else it wouldn't work to the mystique of The Undertaker, just how he is. So I agree with you. I don't see it happening anywhere else but Mania. We've talked about a lot of different things in this last couple of hours, just chatting. Do you confidently think after that is a good way to let people know who you are in terms of the way you look at wrestling?
I think I learned some stuff about myself, honestly. I mean, I always like the rapid fire sort of, you get asked questions, question and answer type of thing, because I think it really shows what you actually think. Like, I didn't have time to come up with answers. Just nothing about this was contrived. It felt so natural and it felt real.
Yeah.
I definitely think that I gave a lot of insight. I think I did pretty good.
You've done really well. I've been.
If I do say so myself, I think I did pretty snazzy. I think that people are going to learn a lot about me from this, and obviously, if they ever have questions, they're more than welcome to hit me up. I'm always down to talk wrestling, as you know, and as you'll get to. Because we're going to be talking a lot of pro graps, and I'm looking forward to it.
So to end this out, we talked about quick fire kind of deal. I'm going to list a few different things. Just say, give me the first word that comes into your brain when I say any of these.
Okay.
Are you ready?
It's like a game show now. Okay.
Alrighty. Elimination Chamber.
Goldberg.
WCW.
WCW Sting.
The NWO.
Hogan.
Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. Terrible. At least the person is terrible. Hulk Hogan itself, but that's a huge. There's a lot to discuss there, but I am really sick of Hulk Hogan.
The Cruiserweight division.
Cruiserweight division on the rise.
Let's see. NXT UK.
Not where I want it to be yet.
Tony Storm.
Fantastic.
Internet wrestling community.
Just one word. Just a vast collection of opinions.
And finally, Vince McMahon.
Genius.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people, you bring up Vince, and I think a lot of people tend to shit on Vince.
I think a lot of people would say out of touch or old man or, doesn't know what he's talking about, but that would be such a discredit to the last 40 years.
He knows what he's doing. Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
He's made some questionable decisions, but guess what? He's a human being, and we all have. So, that man knows what he's doing. He's obviously made WWE a global company. It is a brand. You think if you say wrestling, the first thing you think of is WWE. no doubt in my mind. Everyone knows
Yeah.
at least what WWE is if they don't know what pro wrestling is. They are an empire at this stage. So I'm glad that you kind of said genius with Vince, because I see him in the same light.
Man, the man made this. He made this company. He built it from the ground up.
Certainly did.
Wrestling right now is as big as it's ever been, you could argue, and that's a direct testament to him.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Kevin, this has been wonderful. We will, now that Kevin is kind of he'll find his comfortability within podcasting. He's obviously, as you can hear, he's very natural at talking in general, but especially about wrestling.
I love to talk.
Oh, me too. I can talk people's ears off. So, what would be Kevin's number one